Hello and welcome to Eat to Treat. We are a nonprofit that aims to end health disparities. I'm Dr. Amaris Williams. I have a PhD in nutrition and I'm an avid foodie and a cook. I do live cook along cooking demonstrations for Eat to Treat, and they are hypertension friendly and diabetes friendly recipes, sometimes with a little bit of modification required for diabetes friendly, and they're on the first and third Saturday of every month, and at 3 p.m. Eastern, so 12 Pacific. So I post the ingredients ahead of time on eat-to-treat.org, and you can join me in the kitchen for a great time making a delicious meal. So let's get started. Today we're making Dahl and curried broccoli with brown rice. I'm eating brown rice, but if you have naan or chapati or dosas or any whole grain thing, you can eat with that. All right, so let me just switch the camera. The first thing is you need to peel your onions because we're going to cut them. I've got my onions already peeled, and so what I'm going to give you time to peel yours. I'm going to talk about the lentils I'm using. So I'm using red lentils. These are harder to find. I got these at Whole Foods, clearly. There's also black lentils, which are also hard to find, and they sell them at Whole Foods. But these green lentils are more ubiquitous. You can get these anywhere. I got these at Aldi, but I've seen them at Kroger. I've bought them before at Kroger. I'm sure you can get them at other grocery stores, and they're super cheap. I think this was like 79 cents for a pound. So this is a staple dish that you can make at any time because most of the ingredients in it are things that you have on hand anyway, like an onion and a can of coconut milk and garlic paste that can stay in your fridge for weeks. All right, so your onions should be peeled now. I'm gonna cut up all this onion and put it in a bowl. Some of the onion we'll use for the lentils, and some of it we will use for the broccoli. So first thing is, this is the root end of the onion, and we want to keep this attached to the onion because it holds the onion together so the layers don't start slipping and sliding on you. So I'm going to cut the onion in half, but I'm cutting it through the root end so the root end is still on both halves of the onion. And cutting it in half is just so that I have a flat surface and the onion won't rock around on me while I'm trying to cut it. And then I'm going to cut it, I guess that will be parallel to the root. So like this. I'm going to cut it like that, going across. And then I'll cut it parallel to my cutting board. So by parallel to the cutting board, I mean turn your knife sideways and just slice, keeping your hands on top of the onion and out of the way of the blade. And I'm going to slice mine twice this way, once high up on the onion and once low on the onion. And you're going to have some pieces fall off, but it would be a whole lot worse if you didn't leave the root end intact. So just gonna slice, and the beauty of this method of cutting an onion is it's gonna be diced as soon as you slice it. So I've got these nice little squares of onion without having to, cut it multiple times, if that makes sense. I kind of did cut it multiple times, but like it was together most of the time I was cutting it, so it doesn't count. All right. So again, cutting it parallel to the root. I'm not sure if that really counts as parallel. And then parallel to the board twice. And I need to sharpen this knife. Okay. And then slicing it. Okay. So I'm gonna do the next onion a little bit faster. Just cut off the stems because the dried ends won't break down when you cook. So cut those off. Alright, and you can see while I'm cutting this that my fingers are curled under kind of like a claw. And that's just so that I can't cut my fingertips off or my nails and then have fingernails in my food. That would be pretty gross. So let's not do that. Alright, so fingers curled under like a claw, just slice your onion. So I had one larger onion and one small onion. We're going to use a small amount of onion for the lentils and a larger amount of onion for the broccoli, and that's why I had a large and a small onion. And you'll notice that in past videos I start crying when I cut the onions, but this time I'm not crying, and that's because I bought tearless onions, and I highly recommend that. So next step is let's start cooking the onions. I'm gonna use the small pot that I have. I'm going to put some onions and some oil in that, and start sauteing the onion. So like I said, a small amount of onion. I'd say maybe about a cup of roughly chopped onion for the lentils. And then the rest of the onion will be for the broccoli. It's not rocket science, guys. You guys can just guesstimate and eyeball it and see what looks good. Alright. The next step is let's get the spices measured out. So we're going to have half a teaspoon of turmeric, and my half a teaspoon measuring spoon got eaten by the garbage disposal, so I'm using 2 1/4 teaspoon measures for my turmeric. And then we need half a teaspoon of coriander. Alright, and now's a good time to stir the onion a little bit. And then half a teaspoon of, or 3/4 teaspoon of cumin. So, I'm not sure how much I have left in here. I like cumin, so I'm being generous with my cumin. To each his own on that. Half a teaspoon of paprika. I'm using a smoked paprika. You can use whatever paprika you have. Hungarian sweet paprika, the kind that doesn't have any label on it because it was 50 cents at Kroger. whatever you want. And then, so half a teaspoon of that. Don't forget to stir your onion. And finally, 3/4 teaspoon of garam masala. Alright. And the spices are ready, so let's set that to the side. Stir your onion. The onions are starting to soften, so let's add the garlic and the ginger. I think this isn't open yet. So I'm using ginger and garlic paste. These keep in your fridge for weeks, and you don't have to cut anything or grate anything or use that little masher thingy that you then have to clean by hand because it can't go in the dishwasher. So that's the benefit of the ginger and garlic paste. So I'm putting about a tablespoon of garlic in there. I like garlic, so you can use more or less depending on your preference. I'm turning down my heat because my onions are browning. And then the ginger paste, only put about a teaspoon in there because ginger is pretty strong. Alright, and let's give it a stir. And my pan is kind of dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil to it. Because the spices, when we add the spices in a few seconds, it's going to eat up that oil. Alright, so let's go ahead and add the spices that we measured out. Stir that in there pretty good. Okay, now my spices have stuck to the bottom of my pot, so we're going to deglaze before it burns too bad with some vegetable broth. And I believe I said 2 cups of vegetable broth, or 1 3/4 cup of vegetable broth. A little bit more. So 1 3/4 of vegetable broth in. And that'll loosen the spices from the base of the pot. Okay. You're supposed to wash or rinse your lentils. I forgot to do that, so I'm going to let you know what it tastes like and what the texture is like when you don't rinse your lentils. But you're supposed to rinse your lentils. And that just means put them in a sieve and run some water over them and then let them drain. So we're going to experiment today and we're going to see what it's like when you don't rinse lentils. Alright, so I got a cup of red lentils here. And I'm just going to dump that in. give it a little stir. All right. Let me just make sure we're not forgetting anything. Alright, so now we want to cover this and cook it for 8 to 10 minutes. And while we're waiting on that, we'll make the broccoli. So I'm going to turn mine down to 3.5, and we're going to see if that's boiling too much, and if it is, then I'll turn it down more. But let's start with the broccoli. The first thing with the broccoli is we got to get these onions cooked. So I'm going to turn on this one, and hopefully it doesn't blow any fuses. Alright, so a little olive oil in the pan, and then dump the onion in there. Okay, next step. The next step is we're going to add the ginger and the cumin, but we're going to let the onion cook a little bit first. Meanwhile, let's cut the broccoli. So, I have a whole head of broccoli here that I've rinsed. I did remember to rinse the broccoli. I did not rinse the lentils though. And I'm just going to cut the florets or florets off. They are nice and ripe for the cutting. You just get your knife in between there and cut them down. Turn the head and keep cutting off florets. When you get to the middle, it's going to be denser and it's going to be harder to cut them off cleanly. So then you just start slicing it. Alright. So I'm just cutting it in half. I'm going to put the broccoli stems, so the florets I'm going to put in a bowl. The stems that I cut off, I'm going to keep those because they make delicious soup, and you can use them when you make vegetable stock, if you make vegetable stock. But definitely keep your broccoli stems, because when you make a vegetable soup, like say you have a ton of veggies in your fridge and they're going bad soon, so you got to cook them. You can just throw them all in a pot with some water or some vegetable stock and make a vegetable stew. You can put that stew in a blender with some coconut milk or some cream, not a lot of cream, just a little bit, and make a cream of vegetable stew. It's really good when you do that, especially if you put some potatoes in there. If you want creaminess without cream, potatoes is the way to go. Stir your onions, don't let them brown too much. Alright, so I'm cutting the stems off, keeping the florets. Okay. Okay, so I've got this bag, this freezer bag that I've labeled broccoli stems, and I've already got some broccoli stems in there from when I made this before. And I also put Romanesco stems in there. And some of you may be wondering what this is on my plate over here. This is half of a head of Romanesco. It's a very pretty vegetable. Tastes like spicy broccoli. I do like it, but I'm not putting it in today because I've got plenty of broccoli. Okay, so our onion is softened. Let us put some ginger and some cumin in there. So we need half a teaspoon of cumin, almost empty here. Just gonna dump the rest in there. Okay, that's about half a teaspoon of cumin and then 1 teaspoon of ginger. And then give that a good stir. Okay, looks like my lentils have absorbed all of the liquid, so I just turned them off. We're going to get to them in a second. We're going to add more liquid to it. We're going to add the coconut milk and the tomatoes, but we don't want them to burn on the bottom, so I'm just going to turn them off for now, and then we'll get to them in a second. So, let's get to the tomatoes and the coconut milk. I'm using a light coconut milk and just regular crushed tomatoes. Go ahead and open your tomatoes in your coconut milk. I turned off my pan that I'm going to cook the broccoli in because I don't want the cumin to burn while we take care of these lentils. Alright, so we want half a cup of crushed tomatoes, and actually while you're at it, put half a cup of crushed tomatoes in the lentils and also in the broccoli. So half a cup here and half a cup there. And then open your coconut milk. Open your coconut milk and put half a cup of coconut milk in the lentils. You may want to stir your coconut milk before you pour it, because generally all the cream or the fat will rise to the top of your can. Or alternatively, if you haven't opened your can yet, shake it first. If there's a little air in there, then you can mix up the cream and the water, the coconut water. But I just stirred mine, and now I'm going to measure out half a cup of coconut milk and dump that in the lentils. Yes, coconut milk. Alright. My spoon. Oh, here it is. Got it. So just stir the liquid in to the lentils. If you're using some other type of lentil that's not a red lentil and yours hasn't absorbed all the liquid yet, keep cooking your lentils until it absorbs all the liquid. Then add the coconut milk and the tomatoes. Alright, so I'm going to cook the lentils a little longer, uncovered this time. We're going to cook them about 5 minutes. Uncovered. I'm going to turn it down back to 3 so it doesn't burn on the bottom. And let's get back to the broccoli. I'm tasting my crushed tomatoes, and these crushed tomatoes that I'm using today, they have salt in them. I can taste the salt. And the crushed tomatoes that I used when I developed this recipe, they did not have salt in them. They tasted pretty bland. So, I'm probably not going to salt my lentils and broccoli at the end. But if you're taste your crushed tomatoes and tell me if they have salt in them or not. And then if they don't have salt, then you may need to add some at the end after you taste your food. If they do have salt in them, then you probably won't have to add salt or add less salt. So definitely taste your food before you salt it. Alright, so we got the tomato sauce with the broccoli, where the broccoli is going to go. In with the onion and the cumin and the ginger. The next step is to add some garam masala and some chili powder. So we need, how much garam masala? 3/4 teaspoon of garam masala. That's a good half. Alright, 3/4 teaspoon of garam masala. And then chili powder. I'm using a chipotle chili powder, but you can use any type of chili powder that you want. We need 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder. Okay. Alright, I stirred my lentils. You might want to stir yours. And I'm going to turn the heat back on the broccoli dish. I'll turn it on 4 out of 5. Alright, and once that gets up to temperature, I'm going to add the broccoli. Okay, and then we're just about done. So basically we're going to cook this until the desired texture that you want on your broccoli, the desired level of doneness. And let me just change the view a little bit so you can see more of what I'm doing. And so just stir the curry sauce onto the broccoli, and you can put a top on this and steam the broccoli, or you can just let the broccoli cook in the curry sauce. until it gets to the texture that you want. And we're essentially done. Now it's just sit and wait, or clean up the kitchen a little bit. So I'm just going to clean up my area here. And let's talk about the rice. So I made brown rice to go with mine, like I said, and I cooked it with salt and water, in water with salt. And these green cardamom pods, I just put them in there whole. I put 4 in for 1 cup of rice with 2 cups of water. And the rice tastes great. I make it like this all the time. Sometimes I put star anise in there, but just throw some cardamom pods in there. It flavors the whole pot of rice. I'm turning the lentils off, and they can cook the rest of the way if they need to, just with residual heat. One way you can tell if your lentils are almost done is just get a spoon, stick it in there, and taste it after it cools a little bit. And then just take note of the texture of the lentils. Do they taste done? Do they feel done in your mouth? If not, cook them a little longer. If you're cooking a more the black lentils or the green lentils that take a little longer to cook, you can add more liquid if necessary. But when I made green lentils with this recipe, they just absorb the liquid slower, and that's why they took longer to cook. So I didn't need to add more liquid. It was enough liquid in there. Just had to wait longer. So we're good on that. And one thing that I tested out when I was testing this recipe is you can add coconut milk to the broccoli curry as well. Because I've got, most of a can of coconut milk here that I'm either going to have to make more lentils with, which is a plus, or I'm going to have to do something else with it. And throwing it in this broccoli curry is something that is actually pretty good. I tested out putting about a 1/4 cup in the broccoli curry, and that just loosened up the texture and gave it more of a sauce. Because after you cook the broccoli to doneness, the sauce is more of a paste. So I think I'm going to add some of my coconut milk now. So I just only do a 1/4 of a cup. So half of a cup. Pour that in. Excuse me. Turn this up to 5. And the reason why I suggest eating something with this that is made of grains, like brown rice or chapati or naan, is because grains plus legume is a complete protein. So the legume is the lentils. And if you pair with it a grain, you're going to have a complete protein and you won't need to add meat. But if you do want to add meat, I think in this broccoli curry, throwing some shrimp in at the same time that you add the broccoli so that they cook at about the same time, I think that would be delicious. You could also just bake some salmon on the side with some salt, some butter, some pepper, and just have used some salmon. I said salmon, and your curry and your lentils and your rice. But it's, totally up to you how you want to do this. Alright, so I'm going to taste the lentils now that they've cooled a bit. I'm going to use my measuring spoon because I didn't bring a tasting spoon. Yeah, even though the crushed tomatoes are a little salty, these still need a little salt. Did I add the turmeric already? To the lentils, yes, we added turmeric. We added all the spices at the same time. To the broccoli curry, I did not add any turmeric. So, salt, where I put my salt? Here it is. So I'm just going to do about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in here to start. And stir it up and taste it and see where we are. That's better. I think another 1/4 teaspoon. And mind you, a 1/4 teaspoon in this whole pot is not a lot. So we're not, I shouldn't have to worry about my blood pressure rising by adding this little bit of salt to this pot. What is really doing the heavy lifting as far as flavor is concerned is the spices that we added. The garam masala, the turmeric, the cumin. So the salt is just accentuating those flavors. And I think my broccoli is done. This is how much I cooked it. It's still bright green and colorful. It's not army green. If it's army green, you probably overcooked it. Or definitely overcooked it. That's good. Do the same with your broccoli curry. Taste it. Add salt if necessary. You can also add turmeric. Other things you can do to spruce up these dishes is add lime juice. I've got a lime here. If I decide I need lime, I can just squeeze some on my dishes. Or you can serve a wedge of lime with your plates. If you go easy on it, you might add a little bit of sugar to the lentils to balance out the sour of the lime juice if you decide to add the lime juice. Salt, obviously, pepper if you want that. And that's it. So I am going to put some of all of this in a bowl. So a little bit of rice. Probably about a serving of rice there. Some lentils. And some broccoli. And this is a good alternative to cheese and butter in your broccoli. Just throw some tomatoes and some seasoning in there and call it a day. And so this is what I've got here. It's not the most aesthetic plate, but it's delicious. So that's what really counts. So let me just switch the view. All right, so we're done. This is it. This is the food. It's tastes great. I kind of wish I had made a little bit more effort in putting make it look great, but it is delicious. Mm. So let's do an outro so we can eat. So today we made lentils and broccoli with brown rice. Um, it's a hypertension friendly meal without the rice, or with the moderate amount of rice. It's a diabetes friendly meal. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be reminded of the next demonstration, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.